Welcome back to the Anti-Meta Meta Club. This week's race B is the only race that actually has a discernible meta, but it's kind of fun despite the fact that it's only 5 laps. Let's get into it. The Anti-Meta car of the week is the old Alpha 155. I think it was a little over a year ago when this car was the meta almost absolutely everywhere, which makes it a perfect anti-meta car. Like the G70, the Alpha is all-wheel drive, which is going to be really beneficial here because people are driving really wild this week. You're probably going to end up in the sand, you're probably going to end up loose, and the all-wheel drive helps keep you going the right direction. There's something like only maybe between 5 and 10 non-G70s in the top 100. I managed to just barely get into 96th position. This car's good for at least a couple more tenths, but I don't think it's really going to touch any of the really fast G70 times. As your lap begins, stay to the left initially and try to go just pretty much a straight line all the way to when you're going to start braking. Look for this white line right here. That's when you want to hit the brakes. We're going to brake in a straight line initially until we get to this second white line. We're going to start turning in. I want you to downshift a second before you get to the first sausage curb, and you need to continue decelerating until you get right in the middle, right between those two sausage curbs. You're going to coast, turn in more, then get on that throttle heavily. Of course, you need to make sure you keep steering so you avoid the dirt on the right. Get yourself to the left side of the track and align yourself with the left curb as much as you possibly can. When you hit the brakes, you're going to hit the brakes right as the dirt turns into gravel on the left, and you're not going to hit the brakes at 100% because you will be turning just a little bit already. Scrub off speed quickly, but then get off the brakes entirely and get as close to the sausage curb as you can without hitting it. Use maintenance throttle if you need to, if you seem like you're aiming at it, but what you want to do is really squeeze in that throttle just once and get all the way to the side of the track without hitting the dirt. Following the curb all the way to the end, you're going to see that the end of the curb is shaped a little bit different. It kind of tightens in. You're going to follow that. You're going to turn in first, then add a little bit of brakes just to get as close to this sausage curb as you can. Back on the throttle, continuing to steer, but not too much, just enough to make sure that you don't go all the way into the dirt. As always, come off that curb. Any kind of touching of the dirt is going to be bad. The dirt almost feels magnetic. It's going to suck you all the way off. Right at this tire mark, right before the 2 is when you're going to hit the brakes. This corner is banked, so when you get to third gear, you're going to be able to come off the brakes probably earlier than you think. And as long as you did scrub off enough speed, you're going to be able to carry a lot of speed up this hill. So you should get on that throttle as early as you possibly can. And of course, just like always, avoid the dirt and you'll be fine. The corkscrew might be the most famous corner here, but this next corner is definitely the most difficult. Right at the 2 marker, you want to downshift, dab the brakes just a little bit, turn in immediately, and then make sure you get as close to this sausage curb as you can. And you need to be on that throttle as early as you can too. If you jump on the throttle really hard, you can make yourself understeer, so be careful. You do want to hit that throttle quickly, but too quick is going to make you go all the way off the track. Coming up the hill, I stay far to the left so I can prepare myself when I brake to go all the way to the right. Speaking of braking, we're going to brake right before we get to this white line that's before the 3 marker. Following the curb on the right, make sure that you don't touch the dirt because that will make you spin. You don't want that. When you turn in, you want just your right tires on this curb. I actually turned in a little bit too late, and we're going to get on that throttle as soon as we possibly can. To maximize speed here, you need to be on the throttle before you can actually see your exit. So the best thing to do is pay attention to what's in the distance, especially those close trees beyond the fence, to know exactly when you're facing the right direction to get on the throttle. You'll quickly run out of second gear, so make sure you turn to the right, shift up to third really early. Even if you feel like you're a little bit airborne, just keep it on the throttle and steer to the right. You don't need to go all the way to the outside, but getting close to the outside will help. When you get to the beginning of the curbing here on the right, we're going to lift off the throttle and turn in simultaneously. Continuing to keep a little bit of throttle so you can continue pulling yourself around the corner. You want to get on the throttle just a little bit more to make sure you don't hit that bump, but if you time it right, you can lift off and just kind of straddle that bump. You don't want to run all the way over it. I kind of ran over it. I straddled it just a little bit, but either way, if you straddle it, you can get back on that throttle really early and you don't have to worry about going off the track. Right at the beginning of this curb right here, we want to hit the brakes, but you should already have the car leaning a little bit to the left, preparing to turn to the right. We're really just using the brakes to tighten up the curb rather than decelerate too much, and of course you want to get back on that throttle as you pass that sausage curb, getting as close to it as you can without touching it. As you saw, I could get a lot closer. Your final brake marker is right at the 3 marker. Actually, you could probably brake right after it, but make sure it's not too far after. Decelerate to second gear and start trail braking and turning in before you get to the gravel on the right. You want to get as close to the sausage curb, I know I keep saying that, as you possibly can. If you hit it, especially at this speed, it's going to make your car bounce and you're not even going to have tires on the ground to accelerate away, so avoid doing that at all costs. From here, it's a straight line to the finish. You can see that I kind of hesitated on if I should go inside or outside, but I just went straight in the end and it was fine. Like I said in the breakdown, the important thing for this first corner, this hairpin, which is actually, I believe, turns 1 and 2, is you want to decelerate, get to your slowest point in between the two sausage curbs, so then you can get on that throttle as early as possible and go straight to the exit instead of using a lot of maintenance throttle and kind of waiting to get fully on the throttle. That's really the same with all of these corners. Because of the all-wheel drive, you want to take advantage of the grip it has. So you really want to just point and squirt. You want to get yourself in the right position, then get fully on the throttle as early as you can. Since this corner is uphill and it is banked, you need to make sure you carry as much speed as you can, and you're probably going to be carrying a little bit more speed than you expect. Also, it kind of turns up right at the very end, so even if you're understeering just a little bit, you're probably going to be fine and you probably won't go off, as long as it's not egregious. Carrying speed through that left-hand kink without hitting the sausage curb is one of the hardest things to do, but it is the most important. Like I said before, make sure you're paying attention to the horizon, or at the very least what's beyond the corner, because you do have to get on the throttle before you can actually see it if you're using this view. A tight line and momentum is more important here for this left-hander than getting all the way to the right. You're just going to waste your time if you take too much time to set it up all the way on the right. The penultimate right-hander is also banked, but it unbanks towards the end, so a lot of people do end up going off because they expect the car to continue turning. You have to make sure that you're not pointed towards the edge. And of course, the last corner, it's important to carry speed through there. Make sure that you turn in earlier than you think if you're losing time there. I had way too many incidents in all of the races I've done all week, and that's coming from last week where I had my SR and DR almost completely reset on my stream account. I'm prefacing this portion of the video with that disclaimer because I did not drive as politely as I usually would. Now, you can see that I am actually in 5th place because I wanted to quickly set an okay lap just so I didn't have to fight the people at the back. I've been having really bad luck with the people at the back of the races. I don't know if it's a matchmaking thing, if it's just people not really playing, so it's kind of spreading the field a little bit more. Like, there are less actual A+ drivers here than usual, so I don't know what's going on. It's been really dirty towards the back. Anyways, we're going to get in the race itself. Now, since there's no strategy because it's race B, it doesn't mean that there isn't any strategy. Strategy comes in, of course, how you overtake people, how you defend, and how you use your car's advantages and the other car's disadvantages to your advantage. The Alpha is very similar to the G70, and it's definitely slower, but I do think it's a little bit more nimble, especially at lower speeds. Right off the bat, I was kind of afraid that we were going to end up in a really big incident because that guy was lagging so much that I couldn't really tell where he was, and I suspect he might not actually know where I am either, at least not precisely. Now, some might be quick to point out the fact that I am racing in Europe, or EMEA, from the United States, and that might cause that, but in reality, you can get really bad connections to people who are in your hometown. It seems to not actually be related to distance whatsoever. As you can tell, everyone around me has a good connection except for the guy directly in front, but everyone else seems really stable. So I don't know if it's him, if it's me, or if it's just the combination of both of our connections, but it was scary. Not quite as scary as seeing someone come off there because most people rejoin really poorly, and even when they don't mean to rejoin poorly, they sometimes slide as they come back on. And speaking of sliding, that guy definitely missed his brakes or just went for a really ambitious pass. I thought I was going to get hit, but I somehow threaded the needle, and I was really lucky. The guy that made the dirty move, not necessarily dirty, the guy that made the clumsy move did give me space. Now, this is when I got a little scared and I made kind of a weird judgment call. I decided to go all the way to the outside, and it was the right thing to do because neither of those guys would have made the corner. I took a weird line all the way to the outside when I hit the brakes, but that was partially because I saw the guys coming in the rear view and I wanted to avoid them, partially because I was just going to take that line and he was far enough back that he shouldn't go for a dive anyways, but I should have guessed that he would. When you get in situations like this where you have multiple people driving both dirty and or clumsy, you've got to really pay attention to exactly what type of dirty and or clumsy things they do, and it looked like Doppelhammer was going to go for a pass pretty much no matter what. If you can pay attention to these things, then you can kind of predict where they're going to go when they get in accidents or incidents, and then you can place your car appropriately to try to get past. It's not a science though, so what you've really got to do is stay close enough that you can make a move, but not so close that you get involved in any of the shenanigans that are happening. Now, in my mind, P. Doppelhammer braked way too late and would have hit me, but Mickey Motorsport seemed to have braked even harder. I'm talking about the incident at the last corner of the last lap, so my patience was wearing thin, and I decided I wasn't really going to wait around anymore. Now, in my defense, I made the apex, and he saw me coming, which was really good, but I wouldn't really usually dive like that. That was kind of an egregious dive. I was just mad, especially because I had had such a rough night, but it was really good that Mickey Motorsport had seen it coming, because then it wasn't an issue anymore. Jumping forward about 1 lap, it took me about that long to get close enough to Doppelhammer to try to actually do anything. Now, as I was approaching him, I realized again that the connection was really weird. It was iffy, so I was going to go on the outside. I wasn't planning on trying to pass him on the outside, because that's just scary against people you don't know. I did want to go on the outside, so if I misjudged the braking and he was actually closer, I wouldn't hit him, and I tried to just sneak it on the inside. It looked like I was almost going through him at one point. It felt like I should have hit him, but there was no actual collision, there was no noise, and so I kept going. Now, coming out of this corner, I meant to go immediately to the inside to defend, and looking at the radar, I thought that I had space. I thought it was a connection thing at the time, but looking back at it now, I think that I just barely cut off his nose. Now, luckily, it didn't push him off track. It didn't ruin either of our races, but that's definitely not something I would have done on purpose. So I apologize, Doppelhammer, if you're watching. I did not mean to cut off your nose, and I would have definitely given you the spot back if it looked like I had done that. Or actually, sorry, if I had done that on purpose or had just messed up. At the time, I was just convinced that it was a connection thing, but in reality, I think I just cut off his nose, unfortunately. Now, the rest of this is just normal defending. I went pretty deep into there, but I held the inside line. I didn't try to push him wide or anything like that. And when he approached really quickly like that, I thought he was going to punt me, but he checked up again too. It's looking back at this and it makes me feel better about the incident where I pretty much cut off his nose, because if he was really mad, he probably would not have given me space, or at least would have tried to push me off, but he was being very clean. So I do really appreciate Doppelhammer for the fact that he kept it clean despite the fact that I did not keep it 100% clean. I didn't realize what happened immediately, but it looks like he did have a penalty from something that happened. I'm not quite sure what it was, so right now it's just up to me to make it to the end, because there's no way I'm catching the fastest guy on track who has a 7-second lead in a single lap. Jumping forward, the only thing we actually missed was me getting a penalty and having a not very good lap, but it was good enough to maintain second place from 5th place using the anti-meta car surrounded by the meta cars. Like I said before, this race is really short, and of course it's ruled by the G70, but one look right there shows you that this is indeed a good anti-meta car. As always, thank you very much for watching my video. If you like what you saw, please don't forget to like and subscribe. And of course, we're going to leave you with a look at all of my current members. Thank you guys very much. Did you know that if you're a member of my channel, you actually smell 17% better? It's a fact. Look it up.